Hello, Forecaster here again, and we are back for episode 126. Now, as you can see, I have acquired some sheep. Now, I did this while recording, so I've already recorded this episode. However, I accidentally deleted the footage, so here we are with some sheep already. It wasn't particularly spectacular. I made a soul cairn and loaded it up with a couple of diamonds, one at a time, of course, because it only has one shot in it at a time. Then I went in that direction until I found a couple of sheep. I popped them into eggs and then brought them back here, which went very smoothly. I didn't have to go very far. I just had to go to the end of my path, if you remember that. Pretty much, and as you can see, I've been breeding them, and I'm now producing a bunch of wool, which is great because I'm going to need quite a bit of it going forward, and we're going to find out why that is shortly. So, last episode, I was having issues with the microcontroller. It didn't quite work, and after some troubleshooting, I guess you would call it, I figured out, with some additional help as well, that it was caused by another mod. I think it was, it was it Agricraft? Yes. So it was caused by some sort of issue in Agricraft. So updating Agricraft fixed it, and since then I've also updated Railcraft, Open Computers, and I've added Computronics. Now, Computronics is a mod originally made by Assy, who was the maintainer of Buildcraft for quite a while, but it's now being maintained and expanded by Vexados. So this is Computronics. It adds a bunch of things: digital detector, camera, lamp, digital locomotive relay, which is an interesting thing. Not really relevant to us right now because it requires electric locomotives. We have other stuff, and most recently, it has had a digital controller box added. It also has a digital receiver box. And these are special boxes that, for one thing, you can connect them to a computer, obviously, since they're added by Computronics. But they can also connect to multiple controllers or receivers, up to 32, I believe. Is the current number. Now, this is a beta, so it's not released officially yet, and there may still be bugs, but I've been testing it, and so far those issues I've found have been fixed. But so you can connect, say, this controller to up to 32 different signals, which you can name and then control with a computer, which is very neat indeed. It also adds a light board, which is a cool thing. This goes in a server rack from Open Computers and can display. It has a number of lights on it that you can put in different configurations and then control with your program to display statuses of programs and such. It also has a self-destruct card and a server board, and a rack capacitor, which is essentially a battery that goes in a server rack if you want it to be able to store more power. Pretty simply. It also adds tapes and a tape rack, which I'm not all that familiar with, but pretty sure they can play music and store data and stuff. So that's not really what we're going to have a look at. Now, I fixed this. So if we turn this on, you can now see that it works. Now I have this wire from Project Red here, and you can see when I turned on the microcontroller, it connected to the wire. Now the program in the microcontroller is running, and as I explained when we went through the program, it is checking this block space here on the back, and if it is air, it is not going to output a redstone signal, and if it's outputting a redstone signal, it's going to turn it off, and if it's anything other than air, it is going to turn the redstone signal back on, or turn it on. So if I put a lever here, which I'm not going to turn on, when 5 seconds have passed approximately and the program checks the block again, it's going to turn the redstone signal on. This indicates that there is a block here, and this of course works with fluids as well, so anything that is not air. And why do I have iron dust on me? So I'm going to use this. This is going to sit in the reservoir wall, of course, in the fuel reservoir. And when the fluid reaches up to a certain microcontroller, it is going to start outputting a redstone signal. Now, to use that redstone signal, I'm going to use an integrated circuit from Project Red. So over here, I've made an IC workbench and an IC printer. In here, we have a blueprint, which I'm going to grab, and we can look at this like this here. But I'm going to put it on this table here. That means we can go into the editor, and I can point at things. So an integrated circuit is essentially a circuit made out of Project Red, circuits, like XOR gates, repeaters, wires, insulated wires, and bundled cables. But they will all be inside of one block. The advantage of this, of course, is that I can have this entire circuit I've designed in a single block, because as you can see, it's quite large and would take up a lot of space. Now, all this you see here is logic to interpret the output of the microcontrollers and turn them into a display. So what we have here is a bunch of colored outputs, and when this first signal is on, we're going to have the display a certain output, and we're going to I'm going to explain what I mean by output and display shortly. But we can test this by turning these inputs on and off. As you can see, I have a bunch of bundled I/O ports here, and these are sitting on the back of the integrated circuit on the side here, which means that if you imagine this as one block, this is going to be the side where I'm going to input the bundled cable that is going to carry the signals of the microcontrollers. Whoops. So what I'm going to do, I have some bundled cable here, and then let's say we have a white insulated cable. I'm going to have a bundled cable go to each of the integrated or microcontrollers, and then there's going to be a colored insulated wire of a certain color for each microcontroller. So this, for example, would input a signal into the white color when the fluid level has reached it. So then, if I input this bundled cable into the back of the integrated circuit block, it would turn on the appropriate input on these. So for example, when this microcontroller I have over here outputs a redstone signal into the white color, this would turn on. So this would turn on like this, and this will turn on this XOR gate. Now the XOR gate will only output a signal here when only one of these is on. So when this side is on as well, this will turn off the output. And we're going to see why that is, why I have that there shortly. Then I have a bunch of repeaters, and these are for making sure the signal only goes one way. And these each turn on a colored input that goes into this bundled cable. And each of these correspond to a segment on a segment display. And if you don't know what a segment display is, I'm going to show you. Let's find Project Red. Project Red has a block called a segment display. And I'm going to spawn one in and put it on the wall just to show you what it is. So if we put one there, you can see it has an input on the top for a bundled cable. And you probably recognize this now as the type of display used in digital clocks and such. And each of these segments, as they're called, correspond to a color in the bundled cable. Now, they're all numbered, and I have a diagram, which I'm going to put over the screen about now so you can see some of the notes I had to take to figure this out. But simply put, all of these colors will result in a certain number. I believe it should be 0.2 to be displayed on this display. So this would turn on, it would turn on all the segments around the edge of this one, turn on this dot here, and then form a 2 here. And this will be sent into this bundled cable here, which isn't connected to the input in any way. And then this will be output to the top, where I'll have a bundled cable coming out, of course, and going into the segment display. Now, when the fluid level reaches further and reaches the next microcontroller, it is going to output a signal into an orange bundled or an orange insulated wire, which is going to go into the same bundled cable, which is going to take the signal into this integrated circuit. And this input port is going to turn on. Now, as you could see, when the signal here to this XOR gate turned on, both of these are on now, so it stopped outputting a signal here. So it would turn off all of these segments, but it starts outputting here instead, because now this XOR gate is receiving a single input. So it turns on these segments instead, and as you can see, there's a different number of them compared to this one. So this would correspond to 0.4 being displayed, which means 40% in decimal. And then as the next output or input turns on, this turns off, this turns on, which would display 0.6. Then the next one would display 0.8. And then the final one will display 1.0, which represents 100%. So the final microcontroller is going to be at the very top, and it will turn on when the reservoir is about full. So now if we take this blueprint, we put it in the printer here. You also see I have an IC chip here, which I've made, and it cost a diamond and some gold and a little bit of quartz. And you can see that we have a bunch of components listed here. And this is what the printer is going to need to be able to print this circuit into this chip. And once I have this chip printed, I can use it to craft the block, which is going to look like one of these. It's going to be a plate with this chip on. It looks pretty cool. And I can then place it in the world and connect my cables to it. As you can see, I need a bunch of these insulated wires of the colors I've used. And I'm going to need a bunch of bundled cables as well, because I've used those. And some of these plates things as well, and a bunch of red alloy wire. Let's put this stuff back in here. So this is going to allow me to use this segment display to display the fluid level in my fuel reservoir, which I think is going to be pretty neat. So yeah. Now we're going to have a look at my computer, which it seems has had an error. Too many components connected to the computer. I'm not sure why that is. If we do this, we have 9 components out of 8. So the processor can only handle 8 components. So it has one too many. So we have 4 transposers connected to it. And then inside the computer we have a graphics card. We also have a disk drive. That's 6. I'm not sure where the... I suppose the screen and the keyboard counts as components as well. But that's 8. Where is the 9th component? What could that be? It might be something that Open Computers can now interface with thanks to Computronics. That is a possibility. I'm going to disconnect this cable here. This is going to cut it off from these transposers, which lower the component count enough for me to be able to turn it on. Then we can run a program to tell us what components are connected to the computer. So we go components, spell it properly, like that. We have 2 file systems, computer. I don't think you can scroll up, which is annoying. Let's go into the Lua prompt, and we're going to do this instead. That also lists the addresses. That's annoying. Let's do for v in pairs components list to print v end. Wait, what? Let's try it without the pairs. What I would like is for it to list the names of the components without the address. Ah, that doesn't work. Components is a null. What? Components shouldn't be a null. Pretty sure I just used the components. Oh, component. Should be an S in there. Whoops. Oh. Well, so the first value is the address. Let's do that. There we go. So that's a much shorter list. So these are the components. We have the keyboard, we have the computer itself, which I don't think shouldn't count towards the component count. Pretty sure. How many do we have now? 5. Do we have 5 in this list? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So probably the computer doesn't count. The EPROM doesn't count, I think. And I don't know, actually. Don't know. We have 5 now. Remove the disk drive. Come on. Let's put it on this shelf. That should be 1 less. We now have 4. One of the file systems is the hard drive. The other might... I don't know where the other file system comes from, actually. No idea. So now the disk drive is missing. Tricky. If we... Dang it. If we reconnect this and disconnect one of the transposers, these cables are hard. There we go. Do that. We have transposer. Something might have changed in the updates. Because I updated Open Computers from Open Computers 1.5 to 1.6, which is a pretty major step. So something might have changed in how components work there. Which might be what is causing this. If we have a look at the CPU and hold Shift, you can see that it supports 8 components. So if I wanted to connect more, I would have to upgrade the CPU, obviously. So if I wanted a Tier 2 CPU, I would need a Tier 1 CPU, some memory, Tier 2 microchips, and this supports 12 components, which would be enough to allow my computer to work. Now if I connect that again, oh, it's 8. Oh, right, I removed the disk drive. Right. That would do it. That would lower the count enough. to allow it to work, I suppose. So yeah. So I'm not entirely sure what's going on there, but that'll do, I suppose. I'm not really using the disk drive for anything, so I can leave that off until I need it for something. And I'll probably eventually upgrade the CPU. But we're approaching the end of the episode. We are going to delete this because I spawned it in for demonstration purposes. You'll have to wait for the actual integrated circuit to be completed to see the result on the segment display. I could show it now by cheating in some stuff. Because you can, there is a why do I always type an F? There's a creative mode IC chip which you can spawn in only, of course, you can't craft it. And if you use that in the printer, it will print the blueprint without requiring any components. And it will do it pretty much instantly, a lot faster than it would a normal chip, I'm pretty sure. And then you can just click with it, right-click with it, to have the actual gate made, which is one of these. Which is nice for testing. And I have tested this, of course, this blueprint design, and I know that it works. Took quite a while to figure out that stuff. Especially since the only mapping I could find with the that mapped each segment to the color was upside down, which was annoying. The periods, for some reason, was at the top. So I had to make my own based on that. That was the right way around. That you saw that one in the diagram I showed earlier. So, yeah. I'm going to continue making wires and insulating them with various colors, which is what I need the wool for. Now, you might not remember this, but I have added some recipes for making red alloy wire that is more efficient than just the normal crafting recipe. I have one. I also added a recipe for this red alloy ingot that includes molten redstone using the red plasma fluid that is in Buildcraft that isn't used for anything. This means it costs a little less redstone, I think 2 piles less per ingot to make red alloy ingots. And then I changed the recipe for bundled cable to give out 2 bundled cables instead of 1 because I thought 1 was too little. I think it was a little cheap, or expensive rather. And then I also added this recipe, which instead of using the insulated cables and string, uses the uninsulated cables and wool as a sort of shortcut. It costs the same amount in red alloy, of course, because it uses the same amount of wires, but it's a little cheaper in wool because these normally cost, I think it might actually be more expensive, I'm not sure. You could calculate that if you felt like it, had the time, but I'm not going to do that. But yeah. So what I'm going to be doing is making all of these components and then we'll probably be back for the next episode to assemble the integrated circuit. Unless we find something else to do in the meantime. So yeah, now we've reached the end of the episode. So I will see you in the next one. Also, I'm very low on iron, so I'm going to need to do some mining as well.